The Reef is a large estate in Newport at the end of the point at Brenton's Reef. In the 1600s, a man bought the land and built a home for his mistress. She was, among other things, a seer. Shortly after living there, the man was driven mad and died. Although she inherited the home, she developed a strange affliction that drew her head back further and further until she too died. I believe legend has it that the house burned down shortly after her death. Many years later, T.M. Davis, a brilliant lawyer, bought the place and, against the advice of his many friends who lived nearby, had a very beautiful new house built on the original foundation. He and Mrs. Davis, who was thoroughly sweet and charming, went there to live. They were a devoted and happy couple. He was a connoisseur of art and had a splendid collection of old masters. He was also a famous Egyptologist, and the winters were spent on a dahabeah on the Nile. One summer, Mrs. Davis invited an impecunious distant relative for a visit. This woman, Emma Andrews, immediately had her husband incarcerated as insane and continued her visit. Within 2 years, Mrs. Davis was ousted from the premises. She went to live with her nephew, Terry Beale, in Washington, an allotment of $300 per month and nothing more. Mr. Davis had several millions. After Mrs. Davis' eviction, Mrs. Andrews accompanied him everywhere. In time, Mr. Davis was wholly under her domination. Having spent much of my early childhood in and out of the then happy place, all this was horrible. One day as I was walking with him at some distance from the house, he suddenly said, "Emma is calling me," and almost ran back to the house. My father and T.M. were close friends of standing, and he and Terry Bull, who was the only other near relative, employed every possible means to break this woman's spell. The last year of Mr. Davis's life, Terry secured legal power to have Mr. Davis put in the hands of medical specialists. The Villa Serena in Miami was rented, and Mr. Davis continuously attended there by trained nurses who had explicit orders never to allow Mrs. Andrews near him. In about 4 months, he had practically regained his reason and was well on the way to becoming himself. He one day asked where his wife was, and when the nurse apparently misunderstood whom he meant, he in his old manner wrathfully said, "I have but one wife, Mary Buttles," which was her name. With no apparent cause, he began to fail and become vague again. It seems that the night nurse thought him well enough to be left alone when asleep, so closed the doors and sat in the hall. One night, hearing a slight sound, she opened the door to behold Mrs. Andrews climbing in the window. To reach his window, it was necessary to come around on a high and very narrow parapet. She was well over 60 at the time. This, of course, explained the retrogression, and she was sent away. Mr. Davis regained some mental clarity, but the strain was too great and brought on his death.
The next family that bought this house was the Budlongs. The Budlongs, again, were a happy family. They got along fine. But consequently, again, by living here, ended up being cursed. There was a murder. The Budlongs abandoned the house after the divorce. In 1962 or so, the Budlong that were left alive, the children, came to this house to reopen it because it was a beautiful house. It was called the Reef. And they attempted to reopen it. They were redecorating it. They opened the windows. They had a whole crew to redecorate it and to live here. It was a prime this is the prime territory in Newport property, and it was a beautiful mansion. The first one built here. The actual date of the Reef built by Davis was in 1881. And for some reason, within 4 weeks, they packed up the car, closed down the house, dismissed the rebuilders and repairers, and left, never to be seen or contacted again. It was used in World War II in the 40s as a gun post. Next to the house, you'll still find the turret for the guns. There was many strange reportings by the sailors of an unease, not feeling welcome, and they didn't like being here in general. And one known suicide down by the water. After that, when they left it, jazz musicians would stay here for the jazz festival. And again, there's supposedly reports of being at unease and them just not feeling welcome here at all. The house was taken up by people who would go fishing or homeless after a while, and in the late 60s was on fire and burnt. It was demolished after the state of Rhode Island took it by public domain because it was a health danger. It was in danger of hurting people. They were coming down here for the beaches. And the Budlongs wanted nothing to do with the property at all. They offered them a sum of money for the property to sell it to them. The Budlongs declined all rights to the property, said they wanted nothing to do with it, no money, no ties to the property, and so the state just went into a hearing. They didn't show up and claimed the property. The house was then demolished, and the state park of Brenton Point State Park was formed after that.
Just about a week ago when they had a group of kids came out and they had taken photos. It was one of the most documented experiences we've heard of. With the photos developed, and there were streaks of light in places, and there's of course no light in there, and there's actually a horse coming out of one of the stalls, and you can hear them at night, supposedly out here, even outside the stables. And a girl praying in front of the main stall doors at the entrance to the stables. When they were inside the stables, they saw an actual white figure move across the second level. So watching them, and then it moved, and they had watched it move across. And really came out to look, but spent a lot of time in the stables at night. You just get a really eerie feeling.
Yeah, you do.
Gets very cool very quickly, even on a warm summer night.
Yeah, during the day,
and during the day,
it's cool.
It'll be a really warm day and just close to the stables, even in the sun. It just all of a sudden gets cooler, and it gets really eerie feeling. We blocked off the second level several years ago, and we haven't been up there. Well, we don't go up there regularly, but people still get up there, and just on the first level alone, there's a lot of weird stuff that just goes on. It's not normal. And out here.
Here we are. We're walking towards Benton Point on a beautiful sunny day. Quartz could be the reason for most of the activity here. This area is infused with quartz, and the quartz goes throughout the Brenton Point Peninsula area. Although the largest deposit of quartz is this area underneath where we've been investigating. About 50 or 60% quartz starts. It gets less and less it goes up, right into the Hampstead Farm area. Quartz is, as you can see, it's a crystal stone. The structure is formed different from any other stone or element in nature because of the form and how they're formed, and not being a solid mass, but being a conglomeration of different forms and shapes that can be grown. You're able to program a quartz stone. This is what runs the modern age of phones, computers, and such. In New Age theory, because this is able to be programmed and retain memory and energy, it retains the memory. If you have a strong emotional feeling, a death, a strong death, destruction, any strong emotional feeling can be retained if there is enough quartz. The strength of this area as a spiritual and emotional battery is also infused by the fact that the reef behind me has been the site of many ship crashes, and you have salt water rushing into quartz. Salt is a quartz derivative, a quartz structure. You have quartz underneath the water. All these emotions and feelings are run from the ocean, and emotional and energy follows the flow of water. They'll follow the flow of the water into the coastline, into the quartz structure underneath here, and become part of all the emotions and stuff gathered.
The point of an experiment was to bring 5 or 6 different paranormal groups with no prior knowledge of the area and see if they all, what they would pick up as proof. Then whatever phenomenon is happening has to be real, because it's not just one person's point of view, it's now 5 different groups.
Yeah, rolling. My name is Joe Burke. I live here in Newport, Rhode Island. And my production company's name is S12 Films. And I had the idea of doing a ghost story murder mystery based on murder that took place in 1907. And it was a film that I've been working on since 2003. And we came in here with different groups of people, and as time went on, more and more we started to realize that this was a little bit more than what we had bargained for.
My name is Carl Johnson. I'm a paranormal investigator. I specialize as a demonologist, the study and investigation of non-human entities.
Hi, my name is Don Estrella, and I've been doing psychic research for a while now. More than anything else, I find it fascinating, interesting, and I like to ask a lot of questions and get a lot of answers. I try to be as methodical as I can be.
As I was saying earlier to Jesse, when I first came to this tree, I thought I saw something in the center here, this area right here. And it almost looked like some kind of a veil. It was transparent, but it was moving. Right here.
We came with a paranormal investigation group, Moon Night Paranormal, and we did the photos and some sound. Along with us on that shoot was Jesse Correa, who's a consultant. He's the only member who was able to make it for this commentary on what happened that evening.
Yes, we saw a light in that window there. There was an image of a man's face, and we heard it all through the night, walking back and forth around the stables.
I could say something like it feels like evil, but that's not exactly it either. What I really feel is just it would be one of those places where if I went in, I would have to leave soon. I would be uncomfortable, and it would just be a place I don't want to be, and I can't even explain why. But that's it.
This is the
It's kind of like being in a void, and you can hear, but you can't see, and you can't reach out, and you can't touch, and it's like being trapped in a living entity. When you're down there and you're encountering it, it's a very scary thing to start to see scenery disappearing around you, and it seems like the walls are closing in on you, where there are no walls.
Hi, my name's Pat Correa. I'm Jesse's wife, and for the past 5 years, I've been by his side, helping him with his research on Brenton Point. I've gone down there with him and experienced on my own some rather peculiar things.
Just a high school student at the Met School, which is in Providence. I came down just to film and hopefully get something cool for a project I'm doing on science and ghosts and ghost hunting.
Very amateurly for, say, 5 years.
But nothing. I've been doing amateur, very amateur, since about 15, graveyards around the corner, stuff like that. But nothing really, anything like this. So.
Peace and an end to insanity and warfare. And we chose to come here because of the spiritual energy of the place. And after St. Patrick's, also just at dusk, another day, very misty. And upon going upstairs, I was immediately compelled to conduct a ceremony, to bless the space, to bless my friends, to bless myself. This place is very beautiful, and for days I actually felt very amazed, very like in a dream.
We were walking away in the field, and overall it's a cool place. I think it's definitely active. Come back on a less windy night. Is that all I'm supposed to say?
Oh yeah, this is cool. That is a mystery. How they it's still a mystery how they get up there. All right. I'm trying to remember when this collapsed. Yeah, let me take a look at that.
That one I don't get at all.
Interesting. This is like, this window is right here, is where the a lot of the activity is. Yeah?
Dad, as a kid, came in here and knocked some. Grandpa came in here and knocked some of these walls down. When I was a teenager or a kid in my 20s, and I came down here, I was guilty of throwing some bricks and knocking down some sections over the years. I played all the time. So these actual walls, so they were separate walls. So that might have actually been furniture in here, employee services. So the cooking area might have been. Yeah, that section is where they.
I saw them, walking out there, like, serving out there.
That would be the carriages.
What'd she say?
You feel the presence.
Presence over here? This area right here, you saw something?
Very cold right here.
Why don't you try communicating with it now?
I was thinking about the soldier that I saw running in here.
The soldier?
Yeah, and that's when I got cold.
probably got coal in there from 50, 100 years ago. Gotta do a sweep.
Hi, my name is Don Estrella, and I've been doing psychic research for a while now. More than anything else, I find it fascinating, interesting, and I like to ask a lot of questions and get a lot of answers. I try to be as methodical as I can be. I'm able to establish maybe perhaps what if something might be my imagination or something that is actually there. You know, I don't know what more to say than that. Anyway, fortunately, when I've done some of the stuff, and people verify whether it's such and such a thing, then it makes me feel vindicated. You know, I think, oh God, well, I'm not crazy. You know, I'm not. It's over here. A woman who's got the long black hair and tied back in the back like me in a way. But for what it's worth, I don't know that these things which seem immaterial seem to pop up. I have no idea why they do. I see what happens is it sounds crazy when some of the stuff comes through, and I'm getting, well, don't go too far because it may be dangerous. Now, what does that mean? I have no idea.